Hill School in London. At the age of 22, he was appointed editor of Bombay Magazine, making him the youngest editor in the history of Indian journalism. When he was 30, he became editor of Sunday, the news magazine published by the ABP Group. Under his editorship, Sunday became India's largest selling English language news magazine. Later, he became consulting editor of the ABP Group. In 1999, he was appointed editor of the Hindustan Times, the largest selling English language newspaper in Delhi and North India. In 2003, he stepped down as editor but continued as editorial director till 2007. He has also run a parallel TV career, which began while he was still editor of Sunday. He anchored Question Time for Doordarshan and then Roundtable for DD-CNN, a collaboration between Doordarshan and CNN. In 1997, he switched to Star Network, where he anchored many shows across channels, among them A Question of Answers, Star Talk, Veer Ketir, and Cover Story. His show Achievers Club aired on Star World in 2011-2012. He has also anchored shows such as Meeting of Minds on Sub TV and then on the NDTV network, including Facing the Music and One-on-One on NDTV 24/7 and Custom Made for Vir Sanghvi on NDTV Good Times. His most recent appearance on NDTV was as a judge on the India-Pakistan food competition Foodistan in 2012. Among his other shows are A Matter of Taste and Vir Sanghvi's Asian Diary on Discovery Travel and Living in Tycoons and On the Record on CNBC. Since January 2016, he has been a resident commentator on CNN News 18 and hosts the weekly political show Virtuosity. His books include Men of Steel is one of the biggest paperback bestsellers in the history of Indian publishing, which has been translated into 8 Indian languages. His other books are Root Food and Mother of India, a biography, and India, Then and Now. He has won many awards during his career for both TV and print, including the Rajiv Gandhi Award, the Lokmanya Tilak Award, the Conti Award for Best Food Literature Book in the World for Root Food, and innumerable TV prizes. In 1993, he was declared a global leader of tomorrow by the World Economic Forum at Davos. So it's a complete honor to have you today.
Thank you. We should mention in that bio that for 2 years or so, I also did a show for your father for Sub TV, and it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life.
Very kind of you, sir, to say that. So I'll begin by asking you, since we are governance now and our core focus is governance, your comment on the present state of governance in this nation.
I think there's a difference between the center and the states. I don't think there's that much difference in the states. I think the center is very different now. Authority is much more centralized. Ministers have much less freedom compared to what they used to. There's also the role of the civil service, which I think is stronger now. There are many more bureaucrats and experts keeping a watch on what's happening. The upside of this is there have been, I think in the last 6-7 years, not a single scam or a financial scandal. So the impression has gone out that this government is a model of probity, which is something we couldn't have said about the last government. So that's a definite change.
Absolutely. But so one hand on the government is facing flack for the farm laws. On the other hand, it is driving the largest vaccination drive for COVID-19. How do you respond to that?
I think on the farm laws, there was a miscalculation. The Modi juggernaut has swept most of North India and now possibly Eastern India also. But it's always been stopped at the entrance to Punjab. For some reason, Mr. Modi's popularity in Punjab is not as great as his popularity in, say, Haryana next door. I think, therefore, and because they depended on the Akalis, the government misunderstood the extent of feeling in Punjab and did not realize quite what an impact these farm laws would have in the Punjab. Now that the farmers have taken this very confrontational attitude, I think it's part of Mr. Modi's persona that he does not back down. And their claim is we're not willing to negotiate. You have to withdraw or repeal the laws. Only then will we be happy. I think for Mr. Modi, given the impression he's built up of being a strong man, to repeal a law which he himself has praised as being a great progressive law that takes India forward would not be acceptable. Hence the search for via media like the Supreme Court panel, stuff like that. But as of now, I am not optimistic. I don't see an easy solution.
You don't see any easy solution coming out. Even the farmers, saying that we are not going to go in front of any panel.
Correct.
And I have to say rally that they are telling on the 26th of January that they might take out.
No, they've said two things. One is they've said, A, we won't go before any panel. And B, in any case, this panel is comprised of people who have previously on record, and this is true, said how wonderful the farm laws are. So we know what this panel is going to say. So I don't have much sympathy with their first position, which is we won't go for any before any panel. But I have some sympathy with their second position. When it comes to the 26th, they have also said we will take out a tractor rally, but we will do nothing to disrupt the Republic Day parade. I hope they stick to that.
Sure. Now coming to news television of today's time, news media is supposed to make, come out with headlines and which are true and honest and spell out transparency. But nowadays, they are only in the headlines. Now there's immense competition, amongst the news channels and also within them. Within a news channel, there is immense competition. Do you think it's healthy, like where the news media is going, especially the broadcast one?
There are many questions in that. Let's take them one by one. Competition between channels, competition within the channel, these are not new phenomena. We've always seen them.
Hmm.
What's changed, I think, is the nature of news. In the days when I was really part of news channels and active, the argument was that you were only as good as the news you covered. If you did a news story, you ran a package, you sent a correspondent to try and cover what was happening. If you did a discussion, it was what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, only to shed a bit of light on what the package had said and to illuminate the issue. That model of television is dead. Nobody can afford to have bureaus. Nobody can afford to have reporters. So what you have instead is one studio. And in the old days, 14 guests on OBs, now on Zoom. So that's even zero cost. And
Hmm.
you don't worry too much about the news. You worry about opinion. You worry about creating excitement. You want people to shout in the studio. You want there to be this WWF element to it. And it seems to work. They seem to be getting the ratings. It's not a news channel in any significant sense of the term, but equally, it's not Star Plus. It's not a fiction channel. So it has a new genre halfway between fiction and news.
So you believe that the definition of news has changed?
On Indian television? Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
MIB has, when you apply for a license, we all know that there's a news license and there is a non-news license. Do you think that the definition is blurring? The lines are blurring?
Oh, absolutely. And even the ratings are blurring because at the moment there's a huge controversy over Bach. But
Hmm.
if you look at the universe, if you look at the universe for English news as a proportion of the total universe for television, it's between 0.1% to 0.2%.
Hmm.
Even in Hindi, which where it's more successful, it's not that low, it's still nowhere compared to the entertainment channels. So
Hmm.
supposing you were to class these people as entertainment channels and you were to look at their ratings, which many people argue would be fairer, they wouldn't even feature on the list.
Now let's talk about the freedom of press. There's a lot of debate around it. As a leading journalist of our nation, do you feel that news journalism is being influenced or dictated by a completely motivated lobby of people or association to drive a particular narrative? Should news be seen as a tool to wield power?
News has always been driven by people with narratives. The difference between news during, say, the Manmohan Singh government, which was our last example, and
Hmm.
now is that many more people were willing to attack the government. The Manmohan Singh government was not really brought down by the BJP. It was destroyed by the Anna Hazare agitation, which
Hmm.
now, when you look back, was not a significant agitation, never attracted a significant number of people, and was essentially a con job done by Arvind Kejriwal with Anna Hazare as his
Hmm.
face man, the guy he was using as a token. That agitation took off because the news channels covered it day after day. It was easy for them. It was in Bombay. They didn't have to. It was not in Bombay. It was in Delhi. They didn't have
Hmm.
to spend much money. Because of that, the impression gathered ground that there was a nationwide rebellion against corruption. And it's a self fulfilling prophecy because once you start doing that, more scams are discovered, you cover more scams. And ultimately, the impression is that the government is just full of scams. That
Hmm.
wouldn't happen today, even assuming, for the purpose of argument, there were scams. And so far, I have to say, nobody seems to have found nobody seems to have found any major scams.
So we have lost.
Sorry, no, I'm back. I'm back. I'm back.
You're back. You're back. Sorry, you were
I'm
saying
back.
something.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I'm saying even if you were to assume for the purposes of argument that
Hmm.
there was a major scam, I don't think the media would cover it with the same enthusiasm. We have a
Hmm.
media largely that is not keen on attacking the government. Most television channels spend a lot of time attacking Rahul Gandhi. A lot of the stuff they say about Rahul Gandhi is completely valid, so no problem there. But Rahul Gandhi is not the prime minister of the country. No? It doesn't matter as much what he's doing. So that's, I think, the big change. The big change is that while there is some criticism of the government, there is nothing like the level of criticism that we had in the last government.
Hmm. Now, since we're talking about news organization, they often come under the lens of criticism for sensationalizing news for profit motives. Higher TRPs, more eyeballs, more ad revenues. That's the direct correlation. Do you feel that news outfits can ever balance this? Don't you feel that our audiences lap to more sensational news, breaking news as compared to real news?
It depends on what you call your audience.
Hmm.
When all these channels are basically free to air, they don't really make that much money out of subscription. What
Hmm.
they're looking for is advertising. Indian advertising is now at a stage where they look at big numbers and they say, oh, this has got so many more than the other. What they don't look at, which say more sophisticated measurements, which are used in, say, the US or the UK, a news channel there, the big numbers are irrelevant. What they look at is the demographic. How many people do you have who are likely to stay with the channel? How many people do you have who are likely to buy things?
Hmm.
Unfortunately, in India, we don't do that. We look at big numbers, and generally, it's the rule of thumb that the lowest common denominator always does better than a more specific denominator. But doing better means what? Does it mean that you're reaching people that the advertisers want? At some stage, that realization is going to sink in. And there's a general problem with news television anyway. It's in decline all over the world. It's concealed by the fact that both Fox News and CNN in America are profitable. But if you look at the demographic, the average age of the viewer is about 60. So
Hmm.
10 years, 15 years from now, these viewers are not really going to be around, let alone watching television. If you look at the advertising profile of, say, Fox News, it's ads for lubricated catheters, hospital services, old people's advertising. Young people's advertising, which is always the growth sector, even in the US, has moved away from news television.
Hmm.
Eventually, news television will go the way of the newspaper. It'll cling on, but it'll cling on by its fingernails.
Sure. So do you see this phenomenon also panning out in India? The one that you mentioned about the West, that news
I
television
think
will
so.
now only.
I think so. When I was editor of the Hindustan Times, and the paper was doing extremely well, with huge circulation, very profitable, I kept warning that this was illusory, that eventually people would move away, people would start reading newspapers. Most people I know may look at newspapers, but when they wake up in the morning, it isn't quite the ritual it used to be. Often they
Hmm.
just look at the headlines on their phone. They don't even bother to read stories in detail. A younger generation, as people of your age, are not really great newspaper readers.
Hmm.
You're much more interested in the multiplicity of India. And because this multiplicity means that newspapers will lose out, newspapers are now struggling. Give it another 2 years, the same thing will happen with news television. Why
So do
would you
you
want to watch television for 1 hour when you in real time when you can get what you want on demand on your phone?
hmm. Do you believe that the pandemic, made this situation even more worse, or brought what, as you mentioned that give it 2 years. Probably earlier it was 4 years, and because of the pandemic, now it has reduced to 2 years because people are hooked onto digital.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, the news channels have also done well out of the pandemic because
Hmm.
people are at home evening after evening. Even if they're going to go to Netflix or something, they'll spend an hour just going through the news channels, flipping channels, finding out. All that will stop as normal life resumes, and even the ratings they have now will collapse.
Naturally, the ratings have during the pandemic, everyone's rating was up. Naturally, the entire viewing pattern on television and digital was up. But naturally, now with unlockdown and services opening up, the country opening up, borders opening up, it has come back to what it was, pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
I know, as we mentioned about social media and digital media, we all live in now in a social media age. Personally, as a youngster, I believe that social media is like the real disseminator of information. Twitter, Instagram, this like your apps, your news apps, give me the stories real time now. Twitter, FB. but they can be risky at times as well. And by that I mean that it overlooks any checks. If God forbid something happens in a particular area, and if people are just sharing on Twitter or Facebook, it can take a face altogether. It spreads like wildfire. What do you have to say about that? How can we as a society, maximize its potential and not cross the line in giving false information?
That's like a huge problem. They're grappling with that in America at the moment. They say that in an internet era, a lie goes around the world 4 times while the truth is still getting its trousers on. That's
Hmm.
how difficult it is to try and stop the spread of a lie. We've seen that in America, we've seen that in US presidential elections. And there is now a sense that the big tech giants who have said
Hmm.
we will not check anything, it's not our problem, we're just platforms, need to be slightly more responsible. That's why I think under the Biden government, there's a very good possibility that Facebook will be split up, that WhatsApp will probably be taken away, Instagram will be taken away. There are concerns on the Republican side about Twitter, particularly after Donald Trump was banned for life, as far as we can say, from Twitter. So, yeah, there are concerns. In India, we have a more immediate concern, and that's WhatsApp. We have a whole WhatsApp university, a whole WhatsApp school of journalism. People who only look at WhatsApp believe what appears on WhatsApp, and then there's apparently some limit to forwards, but people get around it. So it's easier than anybody would ever have expected to spread lies. And you can see that the government realizes this, because the first thing it does now when there's a riot, when there's any kind of tension, is that it bans the internet, because it knows that the internet is how all these rumors are spread. Now, governments are always reluctant to regulate because, frankly, nobody knows how to regulate new media. But at some stage, we're going to have to bite the bullet.
Sure. At one point of time when news television just had come in the late 2010 or so, that was the quickest that you could get to a news information. You saw a
Yeah.
news information, and then, but next day people used to wait for the print, because there the research would be there. There the findings would be there. Now, and sometimes even to check the authenticity of it, go back to print. Print is somewhat even considered a more serious form of journalism. Now in today's age, if you go to see, if I read something on social media, if I want to test the fact that whether it's true or not, I turn to television. Does television also tell me the truth?
I don't think it does. I don't think television is necessarily interested in telling you the truth. Television is in the business of polarizing opinions, in the
Hmm.
business of sensationalizing the news. It has a very loose relationship with the truth, a relaxed relationship. Sometimes, when the truth is convenient, it broadcasts it, other times, it plays it down.
Hmm. So truth is actually a commodity.
Yes, I think so.
It's a commodity,
Unfortunately. And
unfortunately.
these days, a scarce commodity.
These days, a scarce commodity, yes. We saw your deep interest in culinary and food is very well known. You also you were the co-founder of Easy Diner. What motivates you or inspires you to be hands-on in this space? It's a different space altogether from journalism.
Yeah, it's right place at the wrong time. I never set out to be a food journalist. We were redoing the supplement, the Sunday supplement at the Hindustan Times when I was editor.
Hmm.
This must be now 2000 or 20 years ago. And I
Hmm.
said to them, please do a food column because food is going to be very big in the 21st century. They were not keen, but I
Hmm.
was the editor, they couldn't say no. They put it in the dummy and they couldn't find anyone to write it. So I wrote the piece for the dummy and I said, find a columnist by the time you're ready to launch. And of course, they never found a columnist. So I ended up doing the column. I did it for 2 years under a pseudonym because I didn't really intend this to become a full time thing. And I think to everyone's surprise, food really took off. The food boom became huge. People started eating out more. People started eating better when they were at home. And then Discovery came to me and said, we'd like to turn root food into a television show. We called it Matter of Taste. So I did food television, which had never been done really in India before to any depth. And then there was no looking back. It's been a sort of parallel career.
Parallel, you enjoy that.
Yeah, it's fun. I like travel. I like eating. It's also less stressful, no? Covering politics, giving opinions is always much more stressful.
What
And
do you
also,
prefer
I
more?
think will be probably in the long run, it'll last longer than news because
News.
news is a scarce commodity. The truth is more or less gone. Whereas people, as long as they have money, will always want to live well, will aspire to eat out, to eat better, to travel. So it's a relatively recession-proof business, though it survived even the pandemic.
Absolutely. Do you feel as an individual, and this answer has to come straight from the heart, that you're the same journalist that came in, in this profession decades ago? If not, then what has changed within you?
Well, how old are you?
I'm 30.
Okay, so are you the same person at 30 that you were at 7?
No, not at all.
So I became an editor when I was 22.
Hmm.
It's been a long, long time, many decades since then. So obviously, I've changed, as have you, because we change when we mature. But we also change, I think, when we see more of the world. I started writing for India Today in 1976. I became editor of Bombay Magazine 78. First issue came out in 1979. I'd just come back from university in England. I was, I think, in retrospect, hopelessly naive about what India was like. I spent 6, 7 years in Bombay, and then I said I'm
Hmm.
going to move out because I'll spend my whole life being a Bombay journalist and not knowing what the rest of India is like. So I lived in Calcutta, now I live in Delhi. And I've tried as much as possible to travel and to learn. And the more you travel, the more it changes you because the
Hmm.
more you learn. And things that seemed quite simple, you could have strong opinions one way or the other. The older you get, the more you see, you realize that life is not black and white. There are many,
Hmm.
many shades of gray, and that changes you.
Sure. Veer, sir, we have one of our viewers who wants to ask you a question, and they
Sure.
ask that how you see media has played role in Jammu Kashmir uh, vis-a-vis visit ban on 4G services.
I think I'm not an expert in J&K, so I offer this very tentatively. I think we talked about the danger of the internet and why, whenever there's a disturbed situation, they cut off the internet and they don't allow it to happen. But
Hmm.
I also think it's been long enough. I think they should restore everything in Jammu and Kashmir. The people of Jammu and Kashmir have a right to feel that if this is the new normal, then at least there should be some sense of normal. Unfortunately, the media in Delhi don't write very much about Jammu and Kashmir. Not very many people go there. We've been uncharacteristically silent about these things, and I think maybe we should be more vocal.
Sure. Thank you so much, Veer, sir, for joining us this afternoon on Visionary Talks by Governance Now. It's been a complete pleasure discussing a wide variety of issues with you. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, also for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much, Veer, sir. Thank you. Jai.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Jai.